Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Open Championship DFS Tactics Show. We have everything that you need this evening as lineup lock quickly approaches, that you need for every bit of optimization for your lineups to dominate the slate this week for the Open Championship. We've got the projected ownerships, updated weather forecast, and a whole lot more. I can't wait to get into it. Stick around until the end of the show when I tell you two 6K plays who are going to absolutely be core in my lineups. So you don't want to miss out on that. And I'll, of course, be making a lot of lineups towards the end of the show as well to help give you some ideas for lineup constructions. So we have a lot to get into. Let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. Is the best golf analytic tool out there for your money. There are a lot of great analytic tools out there, no doubt about that. I simply believe Fantasy National is the best. Look, I even had a back and forth with them earlier today, wanting some fixes to the Barracuda. They were quick, responsive. I can't give enough praise to Fantasy National. So go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where earlier this week I posted some research around the past 11 winners of the Open Championship, the pattern that they all share coming into the win at the Open Championship, and the players in the field this week who also fit that pattern. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and my top player usage in the DFS contests I play. That comes out later this evening after the DFS Tactics Show and Calls. So with a double tournament week, I'll have 2 betting cards, 2 player exposures to give to you all. So if you want to see those pieces of information every week, give me a follow over at X. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. And if you are a subscriber to his article, which is free to do, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday evening after Calls and the DFS Tactics Show as we continue the DFS talk over there. You really don't want to miss out. It's always a great discussion. It's very enjoyable and very informative. So make sure you are subscribed to his article and supporting him over on social media. Make sure to go give him a follow. Lastly, we are live. Chat is open. I've seen a couple of you all already in there, so I'll get to you in a moment. But would love to hear from you all. Who's your winner this week? Of course, I want to hear your response to the poll question, which I have typed up. Who's your winner? Who are you fading? Who are you pivoting to? How much do you think the weather's going to be a factor? All of that. Would love to hear from you all. So let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2024 Open Championship. And we're going to move, as we customarily do, on a Wednesday evening to the super forecast over at Windfinder. Awaken and Derek, very, very much appreciated for jumping in chat. It's good to see you, see both of you. Hopefully you all are ready for the final major of the PGA Tour season, the last big week of contests, at least for DraftKings. So quite exciting, and we're going to try to continue the momentum from last week when I had one of the 2 outrights and a very, very fantastic DFS week, just to be transparent. Let me post this poll question for you all. I wanted to take a step back. Let's just have some fun with it. How much are you going to watch the Open this week? So I gave you 4 answers. That's the most I can give you. How much are you going to watch the Open this week? Are you going to be a masochist, stay up and watch every single shot throughout the coverage? Are you going to watch most of it? When you're awake, you'll watch, but you got sleep and whatnot. Are you going to watch some of it, as in the main coverage and weekend? Or are you going to not watch it at all because you don't want the stress, or maybe you just don't have any interest if your plays don't do well? So got a couple of votes in already. It looks like we got a couple of masochists, which is great. Watching every shot. I would love to try and do that. I'm not going to be able to do that, unfortunately. I will definitely need some sleep as I have a baseball game tomorrow. But would love to hear your all's watching schedule, I guess is the best way to put that. All right, let's start digging into some weather here for Troon. You see, and I'll even refresh this page, but I think it's the most accurate forecast here. Once I see Adam Scott choke, I will only watch a little. If he chokes, you and me both, Derek. I'll get into that towards the end of the show. But you may have hit one of my core plays there. But we look at the weather here for Troon, and it's going to be windy. Going to be gusty. I don't think there's too much rain. We could get, a shower or two, a light shower. Nothing on Friday, but I don't see a wave advantage here. I just don't. It looks like the wind's going to blow for the entirety of the field. If you really wanted to pull hairs and get microscopic with your advantages, I guess you could argue that the Thursday AM wave is probably the best, just because they have the least amount of sustained wind. Friday looks pretty even, all things considered. It looks like Thursday AM has the best wind, and perhaps Thursday PM has the worst sustained winds. This is very negligible in my opinion. I am not going to factor in any kind of wave advantage. If I'm very, very close or trying to tie break between two players, I might use the Thursday AM favor, but it's very little. It's very little, minimal, maybe not even at all. And of course, with the weather over in Scotland, this can change rather quickly. So I'm just going to play my guys as long as they are good in the wind, is how I am approaching the Open Championship for Royal Troon this week. If we zoom out, take a look at the weekend, looks like we are going to get some rain on Saturday, so that could be a potential wash. And then Sunday looks fairly similar to Thursday and Friday, meaning it's even throughout the day, maybe not as high of sustained winds. But Saturday looks like there's potential for a lot of rain there. But for what we're focused on, trying to get 6-6 through the cut, I do not see a wave advantage here. Microscopically, the Thursday AM half of the draw has a minuscule favor, but I'm not going to really factor it in. So there's a look at the forecast. I'm actually going to keep that up in case there's another update or people have some more questions. But let's jump to Fantasy National here really quickly. And thanks to that forecast that we just saw, let's look at some wind metrics. I had it. There it is. Moderate and windy. So in moderate and windy conditions, that's weird. Did you see all those stars come back up? That was weird. I had all of them unstarred and then they came back up. Let me unstar these here. The only player that I have seen withdraw is Sebastian Soderberg. He's a DP World Tour player, so I wasn't going to have much information on him anyway. But in case you have filled out some lineups already, Sebastian Soderberg has withdrawn. But anyway, in moderate and windy conditions, in the past 2 years, I will expand this to 36 rounds, our top performers in the wind have been Scotty, Victor Hovland, Patrick Cantlay, Xander, Tyrrell Hatton, Wyndham Clark, Jordan Spieth, Rory, Adam Scott, and Corey Connors. There's our top 10 in terms of wind performance in the past couple of years. You want to continue on down, Denny McCarthy, John Rahm, Matt Fitzpatrick, Justin Thomas, Max Homa, Ricky, Sahith Theegala, Sam Burns, Ben On, Sung Jae. There's your top 20. As usual, I do not collect any DP World Tour stats, so these players are going to be artificially low in my rankings. I only collect stats for the PGA Tour or access PGA Tour statistics, if you will. So players like Dean Burmester, who has played very well in the wind in his very small sample size, and players on LIV, Brooks, Cam Smith, Bryson. These players are going to be a little bit lower as well, considering they only have stats for the majors. But there's a look at your top performers in the wind the past couple of years. The other side of the coin, players who have not played well in the wind: Tom Hoge, Stuart Sink, Francesco Molinari, Tom Kim. Although I usually go into this example, it's a little bit misleading. In the windiest of windy conditions, he's actually been pretty good. It's his moderate that has been poor, and I always check the moderate and windy filter. You can agree to disagree and all that with me, but I'm just explaining to you why I do it and what I do, and showing you that it's a little bit misleading because he has actually been really good in the windiest of windy conditions. Some other players here have not been great: Davis Thompson, Zach Johnson, Mackenzie Hughes, Billy Horschel, Cam Young hasn't been great in the wind, CT Pan, so on. So those players have not been good in the wind in the past couple of years. With the amount of wind that is in the forecast, especially the first 2 days, I really think this is going to play difficult. And if it does not, my mixed condition model is going to just blow up. It's not going to be very good. I'm really leaning into the difficult relative to par narrative around Troon. So in rounds that have been difficult the past couple of years, your top performers have been Scotty, Rory, Xander, Ludwig Aubert, Tommy Fleetwood, Bryson, Wyndham Clark, Terrell Hatton, Patrick Cantley, John Rahm, and Russell Henley. I'll scroll on down. You can take a look at about the top 25 or so. Continuing the next maybe 5: Brooks, Colin Morikawa, Batia, Cam Smith. Here's your top 15 or so. The other side of that coin, players who have not played well when it's been difficult: Nick Taylor, Justin Thomas, Thorbjorn Olesen, DJ, Molinari, Zach Johnson, Campillo, Eric Cole, Kitayama, Taylor Moore. You see a lot of these players only have 2 to 8 rounds, so not enough sample size really. Like Tiger, 7 rounds, just not enough sample size. But hopefully I hit some players there that have at least enough of a sample size to make it statistically significant for you. Those are the players who have not been good when it's been difficult. So with that, I think it's time just to go into the mixed condition model that I've made for Royal Troon and the Open Championship this week. I mentioned how I'm really leaning into the difficult relative to par filter. I do not put any wind in my mixed condition model. Instead, that's why I showed you the moderate and windy filters. I'm just making sure players that I am interested in are at least they're not disasters in the wind per se. So as we move to the mixed condition model, I'm going to be honest with you. I struggled a little bit making this mixed condition model, a little bit like the Scottish last week, and it turned out to be pretty solid. I was very confident that it was going to play easy last week at the Scottish, and it did. I'm pretty confident it's going to play difficult, but I'm not as certain. And with the lack of statistics that we gather for the Open Championship, because there's no shot link, I am slightly out of my element. I'm just being transparent with you, the viewer. So this is my best guess as to a mixed condition model for Royal Troon. It also doesn't help that we don't see the course every year. One of the differences with the Scottish is it's been seen the past 3 years, so we can kind of get a feel year over year how it plays. With the Open Championship, obviously, like the U.S. Open, like the PGA, it rotates courses, so we don't see these courses year in and year out. So it changes. Players change. The course changes. So this is my best attempt, and you will see that I've really, really leaned into one particular aspect of a player's skill set. So as we start with the mixed condition model, let me zoom in slightly for you all. I have 5% off the tee when fairways are difficult to hit. And I wouldn't blame you one bit if you wanted to look at when scoring is difficult relative to par. But I really use that on a lot of these metrics. So instead, the more I thought about it, the more I liked using the fairways difficult to hit with the wind. Some of these fairways are extremely narrow at Royal Troon as well. Players were clubbing down in 2016 and still missing the fairway. So these fairways are difficult to hit just as is. So the more I thought about it, the more I liked using this difficult fairways to hit filter. And I am using total driving or off the tee. I do think distance will factor in slightly. I don't think it's going to hurt by any means. But I am much more into the accuracy. But I do think distance will give some players an advantage, i.e. Rory, Bryson, although his Open Championship record isn't great. But the players that can hit 3 woods and maybe longer irons longer, I think it's actually going to be somewhat useful this week. So that's why I'm using the total driving with this filter. 20% in approach is the biggest portion of my mixed condition model. Even though we don't get any strokes gained data at Open Championships, we looked at this Monday night and just how much iron form is a big deal coming into the Open Championship from these previous winners. They've been in great iron form. Even Henrik Stenson, who missed the cut in his previous 2 events to his 2016 win at Troon, gained on approach in both of those tournaments. He just didn't putt a lick. He didn't drive it well, but he was still gaining with the approach. His irons were still good. So that's why I've really emphasized iron play in this mixed condition model, not just with the approach, although that is the main portion of it. We'll see a little bit here momentarily. But 20% in strokes gained approach, 5% in around the green. Again, this was a situation where I didn't know what filter to use, so I just kind of defaulted to the difficult relative to par filter. I do think that the greens are going to be difficult to hit with all the wind. It's a major championship after all, so some facet of around the green is going to matter. So I did not want to completely ignore it, but I only have it at 5%. I just kind of ran out of percentage since I wanted to emphasize the ball striking, particularly the approach. Good drives we'll talk about and all that. So 5% around the green, 5% in putting on Velcro greens, pretty standard. It's the Open Championship. These greens are slow. They are bent and fescue, which is not a filter in Fantasy National. So we're just going to have to look at slow green performance. 10% in good drives gained, with the emphasis on how difficult these fairways are to hit. I want to see who can successfully find the fairway, or it is to simulate that they are decent enough with the irons that they can find it from the rough, or they are not so far off line, as in like they're in the first cut, that they can find the green if they do miss the fairway. That is what that is trying to simulate. And again, using the difficult relative to par filter, 10% in good drives gained, much more into the accuracy than I am the distance. I just didn't want to put all of the eggs in the accuracy basket. So that's why a little bit of off the tee, but you see 10% in good drives, a lot in the approach. I just want to see the players who hit a bunch of greens. 10% in greens when it's difficult. These greens are actually really small by Open Championship standards. The comparison, I don't have an exact number, but the comparison that I've heard is that they are half the size of St. Andrews. Now those greens are a bajillion miles big, yes, but that's the way most courses for the Open Championship are. These are actually pretty small, so hitting the green is going to be a pretty big deal, I think. So 10% in greens, again, using the difficult relative to par filter. 5% in birdies. Phil Mickelson and Henrik Stenson, yes, they ran away from the field in 2016, but they were still able to make some birdies, and third place did actually get to -6. So there were some birdies to be had. So I don't want to absolutely ignore that. There aren't a lot of eagles around Troon. That's why I'm not looking at birdies or better. It's just birdies gained. So 5% in birdies when scoring is difficult, and 10% in bogey avoidance. Again, -6 was a great score in 2016. To get there, you're going to have to avoid a lot of bogeys. I want to see who avoids bogeys. 10% in bogey avoidance. Hey, good evening, Pete. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. We're already setting up for a pretty full house or big community tonight. I love it. Hopefully we are ready for the final major this season, the Open Championship. It is good to see you. To round out the mixed condition model, look, we have the signature hole here at Troon as the postage stamp, which is less than 150 yards. But all three other par 3s measure above 210 yards. I didn't want to ignore the postage stamp because that's going to be fairly integral, I think. So I just put all par 3s. This could be an error. Maybe the postage stamp doesn't supply a whole lot for the top finishers. Maybe it does. But I'm just looking at total par 3s. If anything, I would narrow this into the 200 to 225. But I'm just looking at the total par 3s because I did not want to ignore the postage stamp. But 10%, we looked at this Monday night. Par 3s made a pretty darn big deal, especially at Troon in 2016. So definitely wanted to give the par 3s their fair share of weight. 10% in par 4s. I didn't feel comfortable splitting out a range because we have a pretty good mix of short and long par 4s. If we go to the course breakdown just very quickly, I mean, the first 3 holes are all under 400 yards. Yet, we have plenty of par 4s that are very long, 490, 472, 483, 450. So there's a really, really solid mix of short and long par 4s. I didn't feel comfortable separating out a range, so we're just going to look at all total par 4s. And to round out the mixed condition model, we have 2 par 5s that go from 550 to 600. Literally, one is at 599 on the scorecard, so you can see that easily coming into this range here. So instead of looking at total par 5s, because total par 5s could include some short par 5s, which there are none at Troon. The par 5s are long and they are brutes. So I went ahead and split out each range of par 5s, but only put 5% in them. So there's a look at the mixed condition model. Areas where I might be weak, if distance does indeed factor in more, or maybe not at all. Maybe I need to go even more on the accuracy, but I went pretty hard on the accuracy portion. So if distance matters a little bit more, if around the green matters, if it gets extremely difficult and the around the green matters a whole lot, I'll be a little bit weak to that. If it doesn't play difficult at all, you can see how many metrics I have the difficult relative to par filter. If it doesn't play difficult, I'll be just kind of stone cold dead because I'm really leaning into it being difficult. And if we should have, looked at a specific range of par 3 or par 4, I'll be a little bit weak to that. But that is the mixed condition model that I have made for the Open Championship this week at Royal Troon. Let's go ahead and go to Microsoft Excel, the reveal of my rankings. And while I do that, let me explain for new viewers and to refresh your memory if you are a returning viewer, my rankings are based on 3 criteria. The FNGC rank, which is a straight numerical ranking from Fantasy National based on the mixed condition model that we just went over, the metrics and percentages in them. Course value normally is how a player has played at that course in the past 5 years. The Open Championship rotates. So this course value is performance at Open Championships all the way back to 2012. Since the course rotates every single year, we have access back to 2012. I went ahead and went back to 2012 for this. And I think it's probably the most appropriate of the majors to do that, except for maybe Augusta. Because a lot of links courses play similarly. Yeah, Each course has its own oddities and differences and whatnot, but in general terms, links golf is pretty darn similar from course to course. So that's why I felt comfortable going back to 2012 and putting a little bit more emphasis into this course value, this event history, if you will. And then the third portion of my rankings, or compartment, I guess you could say, we are playing DFS. We're trying to find unique options. So projected ownership, and these are per Fantasy National. Per Fantasy National ownerships, those factor into my rankings. We're trying to find unique plays. So my rankings for the Open Championship this week go as such. Xander is my number 1 player. Scotty, number 2. Rory, 3rd. Tony Finau and Victor Hovland round out my top 5. Tommy Fleetwood, Patrick Cantlay, Adam Scott, Hideki, and Colin Morikawa round out my top 10. So to your point, Derek, and as I teased in the intro, you all can probably guess who one of the 2 6K core plays are for me this week. And I'm going to be right there with you, Derek, and have all of the sads if Adam Scott doesn't play well this week. But no real surprise here among the top 10. Perhaps a little bit shocked about how high Victor Hovland is, but he has played Open Championships extremely well. Extremely well. So that is what's really catapulting him up. And he's pretty unique, according to the Fantasy National members. So that's really helping him as well, because he was almost outside the top 20 in terms of raw numbers ranking. But everyone else here makes a lot of sense. Maybe a little bit of a surprise with Adam Scott, but again, that event history, I've labeled it course value, but his Open Championship record is really darn solid. So there's a look at my rankings. Don't want to ramble on a little too much about that. So why don't we just go ahead and sort on the price board, figure out where fellow members of Fantasy National seem to be gravitating, and figure out the potential pivots, if any, and which pivots we might want to target. So in the 5 digits, I call in the 10Ks, but in the 5 digits, we have 6 players. 6 players in the 5 digits. Scotty at 12.8, Bryson 11.5, Rory at 11.4, Xander at 11.2, John Rahm at 10.4, and Ludwig Aubert at 10.1. No, where art thou, Aubert? So I don't have a problem with Aubert at all, actually. You see, he rated 9th by the numbers. He's getting hurt because he's never played an Open Championship. So I have to make this number a little bit artificially high, because we don't know if he's going to take to a tournament that he's never played before. So I always put these blanks because I have to give it a number so the formula calculates, just to give you a little bit of background there. This number is a little bit artificially high. I always set it at the cut line. So, just basically dead even. You can agree or disagree, just explaining why he's dropping, because this number is pretty high. And I've got a little bit of extra emphasis in it this week because of the Open Championship and how links golf generally plays similarly across courses. So again, in the 5 digits, it's really, really hard for me to separate 4 of these players. The one player I'm not going to, even though he rated out pretty well, is John Rahm. I just don't know where his game is. He has not played well in the majors this year. Any video I see of him over at Live is not great. I just don't know where his game is. I am willing to lose to John Rahm since I don't know, or I haven't seen him. It's just where I'm at. The rest of these, it's really, really tough. Bryson is a slight fade for me. A lot of that is because of his lack of Open Championship success. He's struggled a little bit at Open Championships. No doubt the year he's had with the majors, second at the PGA at Valhalla, of course, winning the U.S. Open. Great. I mean, he's in fantastic form, and not, I think, 26. No. So his 2 par 5s, only because they're only at the majors. His 2 par 5s are his worst statistics at 41st and 35th. I mean, he's been great. I'm a little bit gun shy on Bryson, only because his Open Championship record is so bad. And Rory and Xander are right at his price, and they've played exceptionally well at Open Championships. But if you're willing to go there with Bryson, at least per Fantasy National, he seems to be a pivot, and that's very powerful. I do have a small concern because Troon can't get overpowered. Troon just will not get overpowered, and that's what Bryson kind of has to do. He has shown that he has the all-around game, yes. So he's not the just, definition of bomb and gouge. But, the combination of the lack of Open success with the perceived, I will say, somewhat lack of course fit makes me a little shy on Bryson. Everybody else in here is fine. Obear should be fine. I literally cannot separate these 3, them being 1, 2, and 3 in my rankings. Xander being a decent amount of a pivot off of these others makes him slightly more appealing, I would say. But do not get me wrong, I will use these 3 players plenty. I'm almost going to kind of force it in my lineups to where one of these 3 players has to be in the lineup. That's one of the benefits of being a member at Fantasy National. You can kind of set parameters on how you build your lineup. So one criteria that I've used is one of these 3 has to be in the lineup. I'm going to use these 3. None of these, I will call them core because I just can't separate them. I will say building Scotty Scheffler lineups has been slightly difficult because it's really hard to build a Scotty and a 9K because of the price, which tells you what I think about the 5Ks, as in no. But I found it a little bit difficult to put Scotty in a lot of lineups because there is quite a bit in the 9Ks I like. So, for me, Scotty is probably a very close third to Rory and Xander 1A and 1B. I will lean Xander only because of the projected ownership or at least by Fantasy National. But to me, it's really, really hard to separate these 3 players in a vacuum. I'm going to use all 3 of them. You have Scotty, Obear, and 4 6Ks. I don't know if I like a bunch of 6Ks, but I've clearly, revealed who one of my cores is. Another core is in the 6K, so I don't mind going in there twice by any means. And there's a couple other players in there that I think are going to be useful as well. The only issue I would have with that lineup is I think you're passing up a whole lot of value in the middle portion. And I do think there's quite a bit of value in this middle portion. But that, like, for me, I would be willing to build that lineup because I play multiple lineups. So I would have no problem doing that once. I don't know if I could stomach the 4 6Ks. I'd probably maybe do 3. Like Scotty, Ludwig, try to squeeze in a 9 and then do 3 6Ks maybe. But along the same lines, like same general idea, Awaken. I don't hate that. I just think 4 6Ks might be might be a bit much. Henley, Louis, Sungjae, Scott. So we'll get to the 6Ks. I don't think your lineup's going to be as unique as you think. That's my issue, at least with those players. But I do like a lot of those players you mentioned. So you're without knowing it, you're kind of stealing my thunder. But I do like those shouts. So yeah, that's how I look at this at the 5 digits at the 10Ks. It's really hard for me to separate these three, so I'm going to use my fair share of all three. I do have a little bit of concern with Bryson only because of his past Open struggles. Ludwig's fine. He just might get squeezed for me, honestly, because I have so much of these three. And then I'm a full fade on Jon Rahm. If he plays well, I'll lose. I just don't know where he is. I don't know where his game is. Moving to the 9s, Morikawa, Hovland, Hatton, Tommy, Patrick Cantlay, and Brooks Koepka. Much like Jon Rahm, Brooks Koepka is a full fade. It's very dangerous, but he's not played well in the majors. I don't know where his game is. I'm willing to accept. I'm willing to lose. I accept losing to a couple of live guys that I just don't know where their game is. Now, if Jon Rahm and Brooks had played very well in the majors, might have a different. I might approach this differently. But since they have not played well in the times that we've seen them, at least on the PGA Tour, I just can't get there. Especially because literally everybody else I like in the 9Ks, including Patrick Cantlay. I know that course value might not sound great. He's 4 for 5 with a top 10 and a top 15 in his career at Open Championships. He's played Open Championships really, really well. Now, the current form leaves a lot to be desired. Absolutely. But I like Patrick Cantlay this week. I've made sure to include him in lineups this week. I was hoping he was going to be a little bit more unique. Doesn't seem to be, but he's definitely a pivot off of the Tommy chalk, off of the Tyrrell Hatton chalk. Which, speaking of Tommy Fleetwood, I'm going to play Tommy Fleetwood. It's chalky. It's chalk I'll eat. It's just a solid play, I think. Guy loves Open Championships. Hatton should be fine. If I had to pick between the two, I would pick Tommy pretty decisively, but I do like Hatton this week. Look, Morikawa's burned me like 3 straight times. I've tried to fade him, and he's played well, so I made sure I put him in a couple of lineups, but I am still quite underweight on Colin Morikawa. I'm not going to have 20% Morikawa, but it's not a full fade like he was last week at the Scottish. So take that for what you will. I've used some Hovland. I might not be as high on him as it suggests here because his Open Championship history is so solid and he's very unique in the 9Ks. So I might not be as high on him, but I'll use him. I'm using all of these players in here. Just a lot of a decent amount of Tommy Fleetwood, a decent amount of Cantlay, to be honest. I do like Cantlay. Most of my lineups have been, one of these three, and then one of these. We're going 10-9, pretty heavily. And when I've tried to get greedy to Awaken's point with instead of doing like two 5 digits, I've done more like a Xander Tommy Cantlay or Xander Hovland Tommy, maybe a 10 or I guess technically an 11 and 2 9s. That's the way I've been trying to get greedy as opposed to the double 5 digit. And then Brooks is just a full fade. I'm willing to lose to Brooks. Moving into the 8s, I like Tony Finau. I'm a little concerned with Tony. For whatever reason, every time he rates out well, he tends to struggle. So, that's just more anecdotal for me as opposed to anything that he's done wrong. You see his Open Championship history is very good. 3rd in irons, hits plenty of greens. Like, there's nothing wrong with Tony. It's It's just anytime he is rated out extremely well for me, he tends to underperform. On paper, there is no reason why you would avoid Tony Finau unless you're just trying to actively avoid the chalk, which he seems to be chalky. So that might be enough of a reason for you. Hideki is just too much of a withdrawal risk. I can't do it. And he missed the cut at the Scottish last week. For what it's worth, he has been better at Open Championships than he has been at the Renaissance Club. But still, I just cannot stomach that withdrawal risk. Because I'm taking some risks lower on the price board. Tom Kim should be fine. Going to be chalky. Should be fine. He's played really well. I want to like Wyndham Clark, but his Open Championship record is really bad. I want to like Fitzpatrick, but he's not necessarily been all that stellar. Don't apologize, Derek. That's what we're here for, is to answer any questions. I know it's getting close to lineup lock, so any questions you all have, feel free to jump in chat. I might be rambling through something, but I'll get to it. Thoughts on Corey Connors? I'll get there when we go to the sevens. I just haven't gotten there yet. But yeah, I'll make sure to answer any questions you all have. Don't hesitate. So yeah, Tom Kim's gonna be chalky. I'm gonna play him. Lowry, you're gonna be a little popular, so this might be a fade for me, just based on the 12%. If he was more like 8%, maybe I'd try to find a little bit more Lowry, but I'm at 12%, I can leave it alone. Like I said, I want to like Fitzpatrick, but man, the irons haven't been great lately. Par fours haven't been great lately, so he's not been the best at the Open, so I can leave that alone. I want to like Wyndham Clark, but other than his U.S. Open win last year, his major performance has been, quite honestly, terrible. So, If I'm in the 8Ks, I will eat the chalk on Tony, and I'll eat the chalk on Tom Kim, but I'm not in the 8s a lot. And a lot of the reason why is because I just like the chalkier plays, so I'm trying to find some uniqueness by staying away from it. Moving into the upper sevens, if you want to believe in Jordan Spieth, go ahead. I can't do it. The guy was playing very, very well at the John Deere, and then blows up at the end of the Saturday round, and then we never see him again on Sunday. I think he missed the cut last week at the Scottish Open. If he made the cut, it was very forgettable. I can't get there. Despite his Open Championship record, I can't get there. Brian Harman, kind of interesting, a little bit chalky. At 76 is fine. If you want to back Robert McIntyre, I don't blame you. I do think he'll have a little bit of a letdown. And you see, like, he actually didn't rate out well for Troon, I don't think. So I'd be a little bit worried because he was almost field average with his irons. He really putt well at the Renaissance Club. That's what led him to his win. I don't think you're going to be able to get away, or I don't think you'll be able to hide mediocre or bad iron play this week at Troon. I think you're going to have to be very stellar with the irons. So that's why I'm off of Bobby Mack. Brian Harman should be fine, just chalky. Speaking of bad irons, like Cam Young has not been great, but it's really hard to argue with a second and an eighth in 2 Open Championships. Something about the Open Championship he likes, so I made sure to have him in a lineup or 2. Very little exposure, but I made sure to have him in a lineup or 2 just based on his performance in past Open Championships. Corey Connors, love him. Him and Aaron Rai are both extremely core to a lot of my lineups. Again, I'm building, a 10, a 9. I could build an 8, although it's starting to get chalky that way. But, I'm using a lot of Connors. I'm using a lot of Aaron Rai. They are going to be very chalky. if I had to choose between one of the two, I think I would choose Corey Connors, but it's close because, man, Aaron Rai is a top 10, maybe even a top 5 machine right now. So I like both of these players. Just understand they're not going to be very unique. But, I mean, right out incredibly well. I like Alex Noren a lot, despite the bad ranking that he was given. A lot of that is coming with the difficult relative to par filter on. Look at this Open Championship history. He's been really good at Open Championships, so do not ignore Alex Noren. He might not be as unique as you're hoping, but don't ignore him. He's been very good at Open Championships, so I really wanted to make sure I highlighted him despite the low ranking. Again, it's all based on the fact that he's kind of struggled when it's been difficult on the PGA Tour, but he's been good in Opens. I'll casually mention Sepp Straka. I was surprised to see he was the number 1 good drives gained player when it's difficult. You see the Open Championship form, it's not great. It's bad, actually, but number 1 in good drives, 5th in greens. The irons have been good. He's unique. He's worth a look. He's definitely worth a look in the low 7s. Akshay Bhatia getting a whole lot of steam, at least with the members of Fantasy National. I like Akshay Bhatia quite a bit. Might have to pump my brakes a little bit because that's a lot of ownership for somebody who's never played an Open Championship. But you see, purely by the metrics, he was 5th. So the numbers really like him. But that's how I look at this at the low 7s. Like Connors and Rye, I'm going to have a bunch. I'm going to have some Noren. I like Sepp Straka. I'll make sure to have him a time or two. And I really like Bhatia, but I'm probably going to have to use a little bit more Straka than I'm comfortable with to get off the Akshay Bhatia chalk. All right, let's move to the 6Ks here very quickly. Awaken, you mentioned Sungjae. I like him, but one of the problems I think you might have, he's getting a lot of steam. 14.5% per Fantasy National. I would not be surprised to see him in the 12 to 14% because he's the biggest name value around this area because he's also been playing very well. So I completely agree with the sentiment of wanting to look at Sungjae. He's not unique, and he's actually struggled at Open Championships. So that's another thing to be wary about. So I like the player. I hate the ownership. So I think I used him once in all of the lineups that I play, and I'm telling you, I play many lineups. I used him once just to, make sure I have him. But I was scared away by the ownership and scared away by the course value. Instead, I want to focus your attention on a couple other players here. You mentioned one, Adam Scott. Love Adam Scott this week. Even if he gets into the 10% range, the dude just loves link style golf. You saw it last week at the Scottish, where he was second. And he was one of my stronger plays last week for the Scottish. I love everything about Adam Scott this week. I'm going to run it back with him. Don't overlook Siwoo Kim either. I mean, we want to talk about accuracy and ball striking. Top 25 in irons. Top 10 in good drives. 5th in bogey avoidance when it's difficult. Like, he's not been great at Open Championships, sure, but you want to get off the chalk of Sungjae, Siwoo's 100 less. Now, I like Adam Scott a whole lot more, but give Siwoo a look. The other 6K core play besides Adam Scott is Russell Henley. Love everything about Russell Henley this week. I'm going to be so extremely overweight on Russell Henley, it's kind of sad. He might be 50% in my lineups. Him and Adam Scott. Like, I just love everything about these two players this week. And you're going to see them on the betting card as well. Or at least you're going to see Henley. I can't remember if I bet Scott. I don't think I did. I thought about it. Love Henley. Love Scott. Take a look at take a look at Dean Burmester as well. He's played very well in Open Championships. a lot less sample size of data since he's on live, but at least in the majors, his irons have been okay. So you can take a look at Dean Burmester. I want to like Seabez, but I am going to completely fade Seabez based on his withdrawal last week at the Scottish. I didn't hear anything about an injury, but a mid-tournament withdrawal for me just is an automatic no-go for the next week. So, if you're willing to take that risk, I mean, he rated out fairly well and he seems to be fairly unique. I just can't get there after last week's mid-tournament withdrawal. Siva says he tweaked his back. Hey, Anuj, thank you. Thanks for jumping in chat. It's good to see you this evening, and thanks for that update. I had not seen or heard that. So that, for me, is just confirmation that I don't want any part of it. Look how much we've talked about or seen Will Zalatoris and him saying all the right things and how he's back and stuff. When you're, as a golfer, if you're starting to deal with wrist, neck, back, it's tough. I just want to see health, and that's why I'm not looking at Daniel Berger. I haven't looked at Daniel Berger for the past 2 to 3 months, even though he's popped once or twice. Just show me continued sustained health. So that's why I'm out on Seabez. If you're willing to take that risk, it's on you. I can't get there. I can't recommend it. But thanks again for providing that info, Anuj. Much appreciated. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Void Rasmus has that lingering wrist. That's something else that I wouldn't have known. I don't know much of the DP World Tour. So if he has a lingering wrist injury, there you go. Although he did play pretty well last week at the Scottish. I just talked about. I love them both. I love them both. If you're going to make me choose, Derek, I'm going to choose Adam Scott by the slimmest of margins. I love them both. These are my two 6K cores that I teased in the intro. Hindley and Scott. Love them both. Long, thick, rough can trigger a wrist injury. Yeah, you're right. You're right about that. No doubt about that. Let's see. Moving down into the mid to low sixes. Not a whole lot down here that I'm excited about. Again, I'll give a casual mention to Victor Paris. I played pretty well last week at the Scottish. Rates out pretty well. I'll use him. I definitely have him in some lineups, but if I'm in the 6Ks, I'm trying to use Scott and Hindley, maybe a little bit of Siwoo. 3 have Adam Scott. Yeah, Adam Scott. If Adam Scott doesn't play well, you and me, Derek, we're gonna have our pity party together because it's not gonna go well for me either. I've got a lot of Adam Scott. Langask, he might be 6,000 even. So you know what? I got to give you credit, P. Last week you mentioned Romain Langask or Langaske. I just don't know enough about him since he's a DP World Tour player. You right at the end of the show, you said you were going to play Romain, and boy, did that pay off. I hope it paid off well for you. It should have. My goodness, he played extremely well. So great shout on that, and I don't see any reason why you wouldn't go back to him. Yeah, I didn't take my own advice. Well, well done, P. Oh man, that was golf clap to you. How many times I've done that? I know the sentiment. Romain, an iceberg in the field. Yeah, Daniel Iceman, I think is his name. And Ludwig Iceberg. So, yeah, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't maybe throw Langask into a lineup. Moving down to the 5Ks. Again, I am really, really not trying to be down here. Again, at the very bottom, I'm trying to go Victor Paris, but more so, Adam Scott, Russell Hindley. if you are in the 5Ks, I think there are two players that you might want to take a look at. The first is going to be really wild, but I will bring us to Fantasy National, and let me explain why. It's actually Francesco Molinari. Let me change the page view for you. Two reasons why I would want you to think about Francesco Molinari if you're going to be extremely greedy in your lineups. Look, the recent form isn't great, but again, I've put all of my emphasis in irons. I don't think you're going to be able to get away with mediocre iron play. Look at how red hot his irons are. 3.5, 2, 1.5, and 2.2. Now, he hadn't putt worth a damn in that time either. The times that he did, he made the cut. I'm not saying that this needs to be a core play. I'm not saying that this, you need to go hog wild with a Francesco Molinari, but don't overlook Molinari on his irons. And, he is a past Open champion. He did miss the cut last year, but, in his past 5 Open championships, got 3 top 15s with a win. So the guy likes Open championships. So I figured I would mention Francesco Molinari. Think about it. I'm not even advocating for you to put him in a lineup, but if you are down here in the 5Ks, I want you to think about Francesco Molinari. Hey, good evening, Brobarian. I saw your comment, but I wanted to make sure I got through the Molinari tidbit there. It's good to see you this evening. Hopefully you are ready for the Open Championship. Happy to see we got a full house tonight in chat. I love it. It's good to see you this evening. How good is Zach Johnson's ball striking compared to Molinari? Stuck between the two. So Zach Johnson, I just changed. Fortunately, I didn't change the page view. So let me. Zach Johnson, do you have any idea what price he is? Ready for the Open Championship. Put my stuff out. Yeah, good stuff. Well, hopefully we'll continue the success. Hopefully you had some good success for 55. Thank you, Derek. Hopefully you had success for the Scottish. If not, we're going to try to build some success. I'm going to try to maintain my success that I had last week. Zach Johnson, 55. So just very quickly, because you asked, I don't think the irons have been as strong. He had one bad Rocket Mortgage, but he's been consistently gaining. He just hasn't been gaining as much as Molinari. But I don't hate this shout either. If you're between the two, that's fairly solid. He doesn't have as much recent success at the Open as Molinari does either. I think I would lean Molinari, but I don't hate Zach Johnson by any means. That's a pretty good shout, because I did not think his irons were this consistent, and they have been. So decent find there. But the last 5K that I want to give you all, because we're almost on time, and I'm definitely going to want to make some lineups for you all. The last 5K in the Ultra Mad Scientist play for me this week, because he is in a couple of my lineups, is Shubhankar Sharma. Now, all of this data is from the Scottish Open, but even with just one tournament, look how hot the irons are. The course value, he is 3 for 3 at Open Championships, including a top 15 in the past. So he's played them well. He's ultra unique. Top 30 in good drives, top 25 in greens. The actual Ultra Mad Scientist play, if you are in the 5Ks, is Shubhankar Sharma. I did want to mention Molinari because he's got good Open Championship history, and his irons were good, but I like Shubhankar Sharma if I'm in the 5Ks. So that's the Mad Scientist play this week. All right. With that, let's start making some lineups, figure out how we're going to maneuver around all of this perceived chalk. Hey, good evening, Gabe. Couldn't even tell you what tour Shubhankar plays on. I think it's actually a combination of the Asian and DP World Tour. I think it's both. But it's good to see you in chat this evening. I haven't even started making lineups yet, Gabe, so that probably tells you I'm going to be a little bit late to your chat, so I apologize. But for anyone out there that's watching right now, and if you're not subscribed to Gabe, I highly suggest you do so. If you are subscribed to his article, which is free, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat after the show this evening as we continue the DFS talk. So I highly suggest you go do that and join us over there. But thanks for jumping in the chat, Gabe. Much appreciated. I miss when Matt Wallace was your lab scientist play. He's apparently struggling. Like, he was the mad scientist play last week, and it just didn't pan out. I mean, I don't hate it, but yeah. I like me some Matt Wallace. Matt Wallace just got too good. He wasn't good last week, unfortunately, or else I would have had a really good Scottish Open. But, you know, I'm not going to complain after finishing third at the ISCO and all that stuff. All right, let's make some lineups real quick. For those who play tiers contests, I'm going to run through this pretty quickly. Tier 1, Scotty, Bryson, Rory. I'm actually going to pick Rory. I think Scotty is going to be pretty clear and away the number one owned player in this tier. So I'm going to take Rory. Tier 2, Xander, Rahm, Ludwig, Morikawa, and Hatton. I really like basically everybody in here except for John Rahm. But I'm going to take Xander. He's the number one player in my rankings. At least per classic lineups, it looks like he might be the second or even third choice in this tier. So give me Xander in Tier 2, hoping he's a little bit unique. Probably not, but hoping. Tier 3, Victor, Fleetwood, Cantlay, Brooks, and Finau. I'm actually going to take Tommy Fleetwood for the perceived safety. The guy just loves Open Championships. Finau should be fine. I really like Cantlay as a dark horse, but give me Tommy Fleetwood in Tier 3. Tier 4, gosh dang it. Tier 4 is Cam Smith, Hideki, Tom Kim, Shane Lowry, Fitzpatrick, Wyndham Clark, and Neiman. Well, as much as I love Tier 3 and Tier 2, Tier 4 is bleh. I guess give me Tom Kim. He's going to be the most popular in this tier, but yeah. I'm just not in love with Lowry. So if you have a strong feeling on Cam Smith or Fitzpatrick or Wyndham Clark, take it. But I'm going to take Tom Kim in Tier 4. Tier 5, Spieth, Bobby Mack, Brian Harman, Cam Young, Justin Thomas, Minwoo Lee, and Homa. Probably Harman. Man, this is a really chalky tiers lineup, but Cam Young could be interesting, but give me Harman in Tier 5. Finally, we're going to take the time machine back to about 2004. Tier 6, Stinson, Sam Horsfield, Tiger, Taylor Moore, Laurie Cantor, Matt Wallace, and Phil Mickelson. Any Tiger fans, play him. I don't care. That's fine. I just don't have any strong feelings for or against Tiger. You want me to actually choose who I think is the best play? It actually is Matt Wallace, to your point, Derek, in Tier 6. But I'm just not in love with anybody down here. Like, if you're a big believer in prior course history, I don't know how you don't take Stinson in that case, because he's actually played Open Championships well as well. But in Tier 6, I'll go Matt Wallace. If you take Tiger, have at it. I don't have anything for or against. So this tier's construction goes Rory, Xander. Tier 3 is Tommy Fleetwood. Tier 4 is Tom Kim. Tier 5 is Brian Harman. Tier 6, I will go Matt Wallace. I don't blame you if you go Tiger. All right, with that, let's start building some lineups. We're going to work on what we think our fellow contestants are doing, and then try to find some ways to maneuver around that. Just a reminder that if you haven't answered the poll question, I would appreciate it if you did. Looks like a pretty even split right now on what is winning. So I'll make sure to give you my answer and all that here momentarily after some lineup building. All right, if we're going to look and try to figure out what our fellow contestants are doing, At least per Fantasy National, Rory is the most projected owned player, and then right behind him is Colin. So if we're going to start a lineup with this, it gets pretty difficult only because they have to be in the low 7s. And at least, again, per Fantasy National, the only players in the 6s getting a whole ton of attention is Sung Jae. Louis and Adam Scott are getting some. I don't like doing double 6 lineups for chalky lineups because I just don't know how comfortable. When I say the general public, I don't know how comfortable they are in the 6Ks. I also didn't get a chance to check my email, Gabe, if you sent your sources projected ownerships. So feel free to jump in if you see something really egregious difference between Fantasy National and your source. I just didn't have a chance to check the email before I started the stream. So if we bottom them out at Sung Jae, they're still, kind of stuck here in the low 7s, which Akshay Bhatia has been getting a lot of heat, at least per Fantasy National. And then you're at your 273s. You've got Connors and Rye. Almost 100% projected ownership. That's pretty ugly. I like almost all of these players. No, there's no reason to apologize, Gabe. No apology necessary. Like I said, if you have them, just feel free to jump in chat if you see something that's egregious difference. I will say, I'll let you define what egregious is, but this is pretty ugly. This is going to be a very, very popular lineup in your big GPPs. I imagine this might actually be popular in your 50-50s and double-ups too, because there's a lot of perceived, quote, safety here with what seems like the best 6K play in Sung Jae, Akshay Bhatia, at least per Fantasy National, getting a whole lot of steam. I love Connors and I love Rye. They're core to my lineups, but I'm going to have to try to build around all of that ownership. Do you prefer Luis or Tagala? I did not like Sahith Tagala last week, and he played extremely well. Tagala's just never played Open Championships well, but then you would have thought that would have affected him for the Scottish last week, and he played well. So, of those two, I'm going to say Sahith Tagala, but I'm not very confident in it, even though Louis Brick has Akshay at 6.8. Wow. Okay, so perhaps Fantasy National is overpowering Akshay a little bit. If Akshay is indeed only 7, 8, maybe even 9%, that becomes a much stronger play in my opinion. Just very quickly, between Tagala and Louis, even though Louis rates out better, I'm going to go with Tagala. We at least know he's in great immediate form. And Louis is always a withdrawal risk. It's withdrawal Louis for a reason. So if nothing else, that might be a tiebreaker for you. I think I would lean Tagala, but I'm not extremely confident in it, Derek. If our fellow contestants are building a more balanced build, if they're not dropping into the 6Ks, if they're not trying to build or if they're fading, say, the 11s and up, my guess is they'd go to Ludwig Aubert. Maybe they started Morikawa. I'm just trying to give you different people or different names here. Maybe they go Ludwig, Tommy Fleetwood. They definitely jump down into the 8s here for a Tony Finau. Again, they have 7,300 per player. Connors, Aaron Rye. Per Fantasy National, this would be Bhatia. Maybe it's Sahith Tagala. Tagala is at 10.5 to 11%. This is a more balanced-ish build that I could see being fairly popular. Substitute Aubert for Colin Morikawa. I used Morikawa in the other lineup. I'm just trying to give you different ideas here. But Obear or Morikawa, Fleetwood or Hatton would be popular as well. So there's a look at a couple of different versions of some chalky lineups. 93+%. The other one was close to 100%. So we're going to have some work to do, but I think we're going to be able to do it in building some more unique options. I'll give you the lineups that I've been doing most popular, which has been this 10, 9, and avoiding the 8s. So if you are in the company of building a more balanced look, maybe you're not scared of Jon Rahm. I can't recommend it, but Victor Hovland seems to be a very unique option, or at least a pivot in the 9Ks. I might not be as high on him as 5th, but there's no denying how well he has played at Open Championships. Still top 20 in irons, almost top 10 in good drives. I'd be willing to bet on the Open Championship history with a Victor Hovland, and that's gaining you a whole lot of uniqueness right up front. Enough so where you could probably go a Tommy or a Tyrrell Hatton. For me, I would do a Patrick Cantlay. Absolutely. I really like Cantlay this week. Using these two as kind of like your base of your more balanced build, you're going to be gaining a whole lot of uniqueness off of your fellow contestants. Enough so you could take a Tony Finau. You can take a Tom Kim. I'll throw Tom Kim into this and really, really emphasize the balanced nature of this. Although Tony Finau would be just fine in this as well. And we're up in the upper 7s. And we don't even have to flirt with the 6Ks if you don't want to, although I've given you plenty of names in there. In the upper 7s, not a whole lot I like in here, but maybe you're a big Bobby Mack believer this week. Brian Harman, fine. I mean, the defending Open champion, for heaven's sake. I have to relook at the lineup and hearing you guys talking. I'm thinking about redoing all of mine, trying to fight the urge. Hey, a lot of times, stick with your gut instinct. You have that gut instinct for a reason. I'm going to recommend that you stick with it. That way, essentially, you have yourself to blame, and you can look if it doesn't work out next week, you can look back and critique why it went wrong, as opposed to relying on someone like me, which I'm thankful that you do, but instead of relying on me and perhaps you just don't agree with what the direction I was going. For example, I'm really leaning heavily into the difficult relative to par. Maybe it doesn't play difficult. So I'm going to suggest you stick with your gut instinct. I'm just here to try to give you some ideas and some players to maybe think about, especially to get off the chalk. Just to round out this balanced lineup here really quickly, Brian Harman, you can take a chance on Cam Young. Like, if we're going to do that with Victor Hovland, you can certainly do that with Cam Young and his Open Championship past performance. You see, we have 7,800. We're nowhere close to the other chalky builds that we had. You can easily throw a Connors or a Rye. I'm going to throw Connors into this one just because I'm slightly higher on him. You can take a very chalky Corey Connors, still be under 75% cumulative ownership. You're taking a little bit of a chance on a couple of these players, sure, by fading or going to Hovland instead of Morikawa. You're going to Cantlay instead of Fleetwood. But that's just to emphasize the amount of uniqueness you can really build if you're really looking for it. But the lineups that I've been building most often, as I mentioned, I have been mandating or forcing one of these three to be in my lineup. I'm going to use Rory just because I'm slightly higher on him than Xander, but it's really close. Really, really close. And the reason why I'm not emphasizing Scheffler is that I think it's a little bit easier to build lineups with Rory. I have built a few lineups, where I can go Rory and an 8K and not have to drop down into the 6s. But the lineups that I'm doing most often have been these two, who I think are going to be studs this week at the bottom. And that's freeing up a whole lot of money up here. And I can just mix and match. I mean, it doesn't have to be Rory either. It can be Xander. It can be Ludwig. Shoot, I could even use Scotty in this. But I've also been mixing and matching the rest of these three. However, like for example, we can use a Tommy. A very chalky Tommy. Since I'm willing to use these two 6Ks, I'm still at 8,000. Tony Finau might be a tad bit too chalky for this, and I would have liked to have used Connors or Rye. That's why Tony hasn't fit. Tom Kim, maybe you like a Shane Lowry. I'm not necessarily there that much. If you wanted to get, really greedy, you can go like an Akshay Bhatia, who hopefully he's less than 10%, like Gabe's source is suggesting. And then 89, Cam Smith, Tony Finau, Hideki. So this is the way you could fit Tony. This is pushing the ownership a little bit because you are using a Tony Finau. But these are the kind of lineups that I've been building using this Russell Henley, Adam Scott, Corey Connors, Aaron Rye. If you want to get real crazy, let's go Scheffler. I've given you a couple of 5K plays. Zach Johnson, who I believe it was Derek mentioned, he's been playing well. I mentioned Francesco Molinari, the Sharma. Haha, got it. The Mad Scientist play this week, Sharma, freeing up a lot of money here. You can still jump into the 6s. Like if you're really wanting to get unique, you can go to like a Victor Paris. You can do like a Scotty and we try a Ludwig. I don't know how well it's going to work, but Scotty and a Ludwig. Now you have enough for 8,000, which is Wyndham Clark. Maybe not so much. You could balance it out with like a Brian Harmon and a Corey Connors. I still like Alex Noren this week. Leaves you 78. Joaquin Neiman, I'm just, live. I just don't know. But this could be Brian Harmon. It could be Cam Young. For me, we've used Connors a couple times. Let's throw Rye into it. Sub 70%. Leaving a little bit of money on the table, but you've got the tournament favorite, one of the tournament favorites, a guy that you can argue nobody is in any better form than with Aaron Rye, Alex Noren, who has played extremely well at Open Championships, and then two players that, yes, they're speculative, but this is where you're taking your chance to get your uniqueness. Victor Paris has been playing pretty well lately, made the cut to a solid finish at the Scottish. It wasn't fantastic, but it was a solid finish. And then Sharma gained like 8 on approach last week alone at the Scottish. So those are the kind of lineups that I've been building mostly. I might have my odd balanced lineup in there. I might have my odd, really superstar, super scrubs like Awaken mentioned earlier with the. I wouldn't do 4 6Ks, but I think I've made a lineup with Sharma and 2 6Ks and like just filled these 3 up as much as I could. That might be an odd lineup, 1 out of every 25 or whatever. But mostly I've been building, the Rory Xander, choose a 9K, really like Henley, really like Scott, and fill out the rest from there, kind of mixing and matching. A lot of it is Connors and Rye. I'll stick around if anybody has any questions, but I know we've had a couple of them. I've got a couple questions to answer. So, how much are you going to watch the Open? I would love to stay up and watch every shot. I don't have that capability. I have a baseball game tomorrow. I do need some amount of sleep. So, I think I'm going to be in agreement with what the majority of the community said and saying most, watching when I'm awake. As far as one and done, my first click was Tommy Fleetwood since I didn't use him last week and a lot of people did. I could use Victor. I could use Colin Morikawa. I am still on the fence. As of right now, I still have Tommy as my selection. I don't have Rory. I don't have Xander. I don't have Scotty available. I don't have Tony Finau available to me. I've used all these players already. So, for the players who have consistently performed well at Open Championships is what I'm looking for. Tommy's about the best one. Maybe Colin, maybe Victor, although I am a little concerned with Victor, but he is very unique. But that doesn't help you in a one and done. So I've got some decisions to make, but right now my selection is Tommy. Looks like that might be the end of it, so I'm going to need to thank Derek, P, Awaken, Anuj, which I haven't seen you before, so thank you for jumping to chat, and thank you for providing some of those injury tidbits. It's much appreciated. Gabe and Brobarian for jumping into chat this evening. We had a full house. Love it. It was great fun interacting with all of you all. And thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. Love doing what I do, taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst's view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Some weeks are better than others. Quick reminder that I will be over in Gabe's Substack chat shortly after the show this evening. So if you're not subscribed to his article, his handle is in the description. His social media handle is in the description. Go give him a follow. Subscribe to his article. It is free to do. Once you subscribe, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat as we continue the DFS talk over there. And then be on the lookout tonight for my player exposure or player usage and my betting cards for both the Open Championship and the Barracuda. So thanks again for all the support, for all the wagers you've made this week for the Open Championship, for all of the DFS contests you play this week for the Open Championship, for this weekend and every weekend. May all your bets be profitable.